Jesus exclaims, "Father, you've hidden these things from the wise and the learned, yet you've revealed them to little ones." So what are these things? Well, he says ultimately right after this passage, "Come to me, I will give you rest." These things are that Jesus Christ is the way to true rest, to true peace. And peace, like we heard in that first reading, that Hebrew word is shalom, which means not merely an absence of war, but it means when everything is where it should be. Peace and wholeness is where everything is working the way that it should be. That's what the Lord wants for our lives. He wants to bring a grace that allows our heart to work the way that it was made, to allow our lives to work the way that it was made, to allow our country to work the way that it was made. It's a call from God. And the Lord says that I want to reveal this to the little ones. To be little is to not have all the clutter that's right on top of you. To be able to let those things go that maybe get in the way of seeing what's really important in life. This is what children have an amazing ability to do. They're able to focus in on some of the most precious things of life where us adults can easily just walk past. We have to learn from the little ones how to rediscover what is good, true, and beautiful in this world. And they have this ability of not relying on themselves. They throw themselves into the arms of mom and dad. To be little here is to not carry the stuff that makes you self-sufficient, that says, I got everything together. Because that's not where we're going to find peace. It's to throw that down so that we can throw ourselves into God's arms, under His yoke, so that we actually discover this freedom when we start living the way that we should be, the way that we were made to be. This is one of the reasons, I think, why there's so much chaos right now within our society. There's an identity crisis. We don't really know who we are. We don't really know where to find peace. We know that peace is missing, and yet we don't know how to be little. We don't know how to let go of these things that have maybe blurred our vision, things that have crept into our country that have made it difficult to see what our vocation was from the very beginning. And these three past Holy Fathers, when they came to the United States, one of their missions, each in their own particular way, was to remind us who we are. Remember that part from The Lion King? Remember who you are. That's what the Lord wants to do in our lives. So I invite you to listen to just small little snippets from the talks that our Holy Fathers, Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, and Pope St. John Paul II, shared to our country, and they're worth remembering. There's many things they said, but I'm only going to just give you just a little bit. One of the things Pope Francis spoke about is he gave us 4 different Americans to learn from. And it's worth taking time, if you don't know about them, to maybe study them, learn a little bit about them, because he said that there is a greatness that can come to your country if you learn how to live these different aspects of the call of your country by looking to these four heroes. And so he says this, he says, "A nation can be considered great when it defends liberty as Lincoln did." So he points to Abraham Lincoln, saying, look to him, because there's something that he's doing in his fighting to preserve the Union, but also the fighting for the truth that all men are created equal, and the abolishment of slavery. He says, defend liberty, as Lincoln did. Then he goes on saying, a nation is considered great when it fosters a culture which enables people to dream of full rights for all their brothers and sisters, as Martin Luther King did. So then he points to Martin Luther King. We can think about in the midst of even the racial tension that is really from the very beginning of our country. Some people have called it the original sin of our country. That we're called to look to that call of how do we fight for justice, but in a way that's nonviolent. And I think that's one of the sad things of what's happening now is there's this sort of violent underpinning that doesn't lead to the dignity of every human person. We have to look to the way that Martin Luther King sought to do that. And then he goes on saying, when it strives for justice and the cause of the oppressed, as Dorothy Day did by her tireless work. So she's actually someone whose cause of canonization is actually moving forward. She might be someone maybe to look at, try to learn a little more about her. She's someone who worked especially with the immigrants and refugees and those who were on the limits of society. She really sought to take care of them. So we can learn from her example. And then finally, the fruit of a faith which becomes dialogue and sows peace in the contemplative style of Thomas Merton, who was a monk, a Trappist monk. And so this idea of making sure that we're taking time to pray, that we're resting in the Lord, so then our eyes are open to learn how to be able to work with one another. If we're not with the Lord, if we're not in communion with Him, then we don't know how to truly be a peacemaker. And that's why division keeps going and going, is we don't know how to stop, rest in the Lord, and be able to have eyes to say, how do I work with my brother and sister? So that's what Pope Francis shared with us. Pope Benedict points to freedom. We are called the land of the free, but he says, what does that freedom mean? He says, freedom is not only a gift, but it's a summons to a personal responsibility. So freedom is not merely just, I can do whatever I want, but it's, I've been given this gift of choosing. But true freedom will come from choosing what is good, what promotes the common good, what is true, and what is beautiful. He goes on saying, the preservation of freedom calls for a cultivation of virtue, self-discipline, sacrifice for the common good, and a sense of responsibility towards the less fortunate. Freedom is ever new. It is a challenge held out to each generation, to us right now, and must constantly be won over for the cause of good, because that freedom can be lost if we don't put it in service of fighting for what is true, good, and beautiful. If we continue to just hold on to a freedom that is, I can do what I want, wherever I want, with whom I want, and don't tell me what to do, that is something that will blow apart the country. Versus, I've been given the freedom to be able to do something that lifts other people up, and that leads to what is true, good, and beautiful. He goes on saying that, he quotes John Paul II, in a world without truth, freedom loses its foundation, and a democracy without values can lose its very soul. Right now there's a crisis of truth, of even saying, is there objective truth? that we can all work towards. We are in what Pope Benedict said is the dictatorship of relativism. This force saying, you can't say that there is a truth that we work towards. There is my truth, there is your truth, and ultimately what happens is whoever is stronger, whoever has the biggest muscles, can push the other person's truth out, and then my truth becomes the right one. Isn't that kind of what we're seeing right now? Just this way of not saying, let's work together because there's one truth, and it's ultimately found in God, and there's this personal responsibility to use our freedom to work towards that, to build a culture of life and a civilization of love. Finally, John Paul II, this is probably the most important one because he really goes down to this understanding of how do we use our freedom? What is our country founded to do? And he says this, every person, no matter how vulnerable or helpless, no matter how young or how old, no matter how healthy, handicapped, or sick, no matter how useful or productive for society, that person is a being of inestimable worth, created in the image and likeness of God. This is the dignity of America, he says. This is the reason she exists. The condition for her survival. Yes, the ultimate test of her greatness. It is to respect every human person, especially the weakest and most defenseless ones, especially those as yet unborn. This is why we were created. So if you think of all the clutter that's there, what does it mean to be an American? To remove all of that, St. John Paul II says the reason why you exist, the reason for your greatness, and the only way that you're going to survive as a country is to acknowledge the truth that is right in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal and endowed with their Creator, with inalienable rights, things that are not given by society but given by God. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As we hear these words from our Holy Fathers are encouraging us to rediscover what it means to be American. America is so much more than watermelon and pumpkin pie and fireworks. Those things are nice, wonderful things. But the only way that we will survive as a country is by learning how to defend the weakest among us, most especially the unborn, the elderly, the immigrant, those with special needs, the poor, everyone who is on the fringes of society and is in danger of their own personhood being nullified in what Pope Francis would call the throwaway culture. That only can happen if we acknowledge truth and we work towards that truth that all are created by God. And our worth, our love, and protection, no matter who they are. That's what it means to be America. And to work towards the common good of every person. That peaceful revolution, the revolution of the heart, starts with your heart and my heart. How do we love one another? How do we look at one another and treat them with the respect that is given to them by God? In the way that we talk, in the way that we act, in the way that we surf social media. It starts with us. and let it go from here out to be the beautiful revolution of the heart to discover what freedom is for. Freedom is for defending life.